Hi guys, this is Alex from Mason Lifestyle. I thought that we would do a sew along from McCalls M8240. One of you had requested me to do a sew along for this pattern. So let's go ahead and do it. So I think I'm gonna do view C. I think that's what I have cut. So let me tell you about the pieces that you're going to need. You're going to need piece number 1. And this is the front, and you are going to cut this on the fold. You're also going to need piece number 3, and this is the back, and you are going to cut 1 on the fold. You're also going to need piece number 2, and this is the front band. That's the one that goes by the neckline, and you are going to cut 2, and you need to interface both of these fabrics. And remember, we are working with knits, so if you are using interfacing, which you have to, you need to make sure that you are using interfacing for knits. So make sure you do that. You're also going to need piece number 4. This is your collar, and you're going to cut 2 on the fold, and you're going to interface one of those pieces. You're also going to need piece number 7, and this is your sleeve bands, of course, also known as your cuffs, and you are going to cut 2. You're also going to need piece number 8, and this is your lower band, which is this piece right here. You're going to cut 2 on the fold. And you are also going to need piece number 6, and these are your sleeves. Make sure that you cut 2 and pay attention to the grain line. Go ahead and mark your notches, right? Interface your collar and also your bands in the front. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to start with, first off, we're doing this video for somebody that requested it, who is a beginner. So I'm going to explain a little bit more than usual. All right. So when I mean interfacing for knits, you have your interfacing for wovens, right? Wovens do not stretch, but knits, you need interfacing that stretches, right? So this is interfacing for stretch, all right? It has to have a little bit of give when you put it in, and you definitely want to use that for knits, all right? So we're going to start. I grab my front piece, and if you look at the pattern, for piece number 1, it is cut on the fold, and then you have that dot right there. You have a stitching line, and then you also have a slash. I raised my neckline on this because I'm hoping that I don't have to use any buttons on it. So there you have it. I raised it quite a bit, almost like 3-4 inches. All right. So what I want you to do, I want you to go ahead and stay stitch. And you want to make sure that you stay stitched to reinforce that area. I want you to slash down the center and then do at a 45-degree angle on both sides. And let me show you the back of my knit. I actually interfaced it with some of that stretch interfacing just to reinforce this area, because this knit sometimes tends to roll and kind of roll on itself. So I just put some interfacing there just to give it a little bit more strength, all right? So now that you did this, right, I want you to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that now. So now we're going to grab piece number 2, okay? And we're going to fold it with right sides together, okay? So you have this, if you fold it, right, you have this dot right there. So they're asking you to stitch down to that dot and then pivot in towards the folded line. So go ahead and do that for both right and left sides of piece number 2. That is your front bands. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now that we stitched it, let me show you, right? Get close with the camera so you see my stitching right there. So now I want you to grab your shears, your scissors, whichever, and it's asking you to clip towards that middle point. I'm gonna remove just a little bit more fabric here. Okay. And you want to turn this. Okay. And I want you to take it to your pressing station, and I want you to give this a good press, okay, with wrong sides together, because this is my right side. So again, clip to that center corner. Okay. And just turn it so you'll have both of your front pieces. Okay, so go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and clip to the corner, and actually this goes like this. Press it, and then I want you to take it to your sewing machine, and then you baste these two pieces together just so that they are not moving when you are stitching them together in front of the your front opening. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so I got my front bands done. So now I want you to grab these, and I want you to put it right there. I want you to pin. And I'm putting that pin right there because that's where my dot for my opening is at. So that's where I'm going to stop. Okay, and then another one right there. And again, right there. So now I want you to go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance, or 1.5 centimeter from, I want you to do that from the top all the way to that dot right there that we had when we opened up, right? So again, stitch from the raw edge on the neckline all the way down to that spot. Same thing for the other side, and use a 5/8 inch or 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched that front sleeves in, or front bands in, and then I also trimmed my seam allowance. I would say I trimmed it 2/8, right? So 1/4 inch. Go ahead and do that. And again, this is my right side, so I'm going to go from the inside, and I'm going to bring this in, right? And it says to go ahead and put your left over your right, and you're going to match that spot right there with that spot down here. I'm gonna kind of pin this so it doesn't move on me, and then I'm gonna go to the front and check it to make sure that I like that, right? And you had this little triangle that we cut. I want you to take this to your sewing machine, and you stitch right on that stay stitch, and you're going to stitch your triangle to those two ends, right? And that's going to make sure that that is anchored in. Let me show you from the right side. So that looks like it's a little too much that way, right there. Okay, so again, you want to go ahead and you stitch that little area down here where you have that triangle, and you're going to stitch it from the wrong side. Okay, go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and stitch that area from the inside. So just take it to your sewing machine and stitch right there. Go ahead and do that now. All right, now that we got that done, right? Let me show it to you from the back. I also went ahead and finish my seam allowance on the inside, right? So it looks nice. And now I want you to grab your back piece and with right sides together. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out which is my front, my back. My fabric has this a slight tint, okay? So with right sides together, you have a notch here on your shoulder. You're going to pin. And of course, sometimes these big four patterns, the notches at the shoulders don't quite line up. This lines up a little bit, but you're gonna line those up. You're gonna pin. And then this is not in the pattern, which, okay, not in the pattern, but we know since you are working with knits and you want to make sure that this lasts you a long time, you are going to grab clear elastic and you are going to reinforce your shoulders. Some people don't do this. It's not in the pattern, but I always do because I love to use my knits. You're going to use a 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter wide clear elastic, and you are going to put it on your shoulders. Usually you can do it in the back, in the front. Some people like either or, whatever. I just want to make sure that you put clear elastic on your seam allowance and that you stitch. And remember, we're working with knits, so we are using a narrow zigzag stitch because your knits are going to expand. And if you do a straight stitch, eventually those seams will bust, right? So like I said, when we started, you want to use a narrow zigzag stitch. So go ahead and stitch your shoulders, use an elastic, clear elastic at your shoulders. You want to make sure that you reinforce that on both right and left side. And once you do that, I want you to also go ahead and stitch your sides. Your seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeter, like all good old big four patterns do. So go ahead and stitch your shoulders and stitch your sides. And like always, this is a good time to try on your top, the bodice, and see if you need to take it in or loosen it up a little. So go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and stitch your shoulders and your side seams. Go ahead and do that now. So we went ahead and finished attaching the shoulders and also the sides. Let me show you what it looks like. So these are my sides, and I also finished it in my serger. And these are my shoulders, and you see, again, my zigzag stitches, and of course, I finished that. Now, I want you to take your top to your sewing machine, and I want you to go ahead and do stay stitching around the neckline because we are going to attach our collar, and we want to make sure that this does not stretch. Yes, it is a knit, it's going to stretch, but we want to make sure that while we're working on that area that it doesn't stretch more than it needs to be while we're working on that area. So go ahead and do stay stitching around the neckline. I would say do a 3/8 of an inch or perhaps 1 centimeter, just so that fabric stays intact. Go ahead and do that now. So now that I stay stitched my neckline, there you have it, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this off to the side, and I'm going to grab my interfaced collar. You should have 2 pieces for your collar. One should be interfaced and the other one should be uninterfaced. And I want you to grab the area that is unnotched, right? Which is at the bottom of your collar, and I want you to grab your seam gauge. I want you to fold this area 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. Go ahead and do that now. Once you do that, I want you to grab your other collar piece, and there is mine. And you are going to grab these two, with right sides together. So now I want you to go ahead and grab your collar, and I want you to stitch from that spot all the way to the corner, pivot, keep going down this way, again, pivot at that corner and then come down. Keep a 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeter. Once you do that, I want you to trim your corners and turn your collar and give it a good press. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched my collar. So now just grab your shears and go ahead and trim that seam allowance. Now I want you to take this to your pressing station and just give it a good press and poke out those corners. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so you got your collar done, right? And usually I always suggest that you find your center backs. So just grab your pattern piece. Remember that dot that you pivoted, it's right there at the corner. And there is my center. Put a little dot in there. And then I also put some dots inside, okay? So now I want you to grab your top and I want you to find your center back. And usually what I like to do is I like to fold those two, don't stretch it. And I like to put a little pin, okay? So now I want you to grab your collar. This is a little bit wrong on the pattern, but we're gonna let it fly. So I want you to start at that center back, okay? Start right there, and then I want you to grab your corner right there that you just did. And you're gonna pin it to that corner right there, okay? And the pattern is telling you to ease this in, okay? You have a little bit of extra fabric, right? If I look at that, I have a little bit of extra fabric, and you just have to remember, that this is gonna go around your neckline. It's not gonna be worn straight. It's gonna go around your neckline. So go ahead and start pinning, okay? So just pin, just raw edge with raw edge, right? And then I like to kind of adjust to the other side and just adjust. See how I have a little bit of extra there? So I'm just going to go to the other side. Okay. Pin right again in that corner. And same thing. Just pin away. You got to remember, again, as I mentioned, your collar's not going to be worn like this. It's going to be worn, right, wrapping around your neckline. So that's why the pattern is saying go ahead and ease it in. Okay? So go ahead and pin. Go ahead and pin your collar to the pattern and make sure that you ease it in. I'm still kind of working on this a little bit, right? But because remember, this is going to slightly stretch on you. Okay, so go ahead and do that now. Once you do that, I want you to take this to your sewing machine, and with a 5/8 inch or 1.5 centimeter, I want you to stitch your color from end all the way to that other end right there. Okay, go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and stitched in my color, and of course I kept that interface spot just free. Okay, check it to make sure that you don't have any puckers. Okay, and if you have any puckers, just go ahead and just ease it in. Okay, just undo those stitches and just ease it in. I may have to do that right there, but once you do that, I want you to grab your shears and just trim all of that excess fabric. Okay, go ahead and trim all of that excess fabric, and then go ahead and take it to your pressing station. So again, if you have any puckers, I'm trying to figure out if I do or I don't. That one does not look like I have a pucker. Just making sure that it's all right on those edges, okay? So go ahead and trim your neckline. And then what you want to do is you want to fold it in, right? Fold it in. And then pattern is asking you to go ahead and slip stitch in your collar, which is, you would have to do that by hand, or you can always fold it, right? And then you can stitch in the ditch, which means that you are going to stitch it from the right side. Okay, so you're going to pin it on the right side, and then you're going to see your stitch inside. So you have two options. Again, you can slip stitch, which would be doing it inside, and that is stitching by hand, or you can go ahead and pin your collar all the way around and then stitch in the ditch, which would be stitch on that spot. Still trying to figure out what do I want to do, because of course you're going to be seeing some of those stitches inside. So go ahead for now, trim this collar, give your color a really good press to make sure that you are happy with the way it looks, and then go ahead and attach the inside of your collar. Go ahead and do that now. So I went ahead and slip stitched my collar, and I just think it looks a lot better. It just gives me a lot of control on my stitching, and I really don't see stitches inside, right? Because that's going to be behind my neck, and of course I don't see stitches in the back. Yes, it takes a little longer, but it makes such a huge difference. And then the pattern's also asking you to go ahead and edge stitch around the collar, because of course this is a knit and it's like moving a little bit onto itself, right? So once you do that, I want you to put that off to the side, and then I want you to grab your sleeves, and you have a notch right there on both sides of your sleeve, so match those two. I want to make sure that you go ahead and pin those in, and that you stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeter for both of your sleeves, all right? And then you can also use your serger and go ahead and finish the edge on your sleeves, and we are going to set in our sleeves. A lot of knit patterns, especially for beginners, and a lot of indie patterns have you setting in your sleeves flat, but I think this is a good chance for us to start setting in your sleeves in the round. It takes a little bit more practice, and yes, you're going to have a little bit more patience, but I think that if you are a beginner, this is the way to go. Eventually your sleeves will look a lot nicer, especially when you are working with coats and things like that. So go ahead and again, stitch in the sides of your sleeves because we are going to go ahead and get ready to set those in. Go ahead and do that now for both of your sleeves. And when you are doing that, just like I have here, make sure that one sleeve has a notch to the front and another one to the back, right? And then my other sleeve, it's a mirror that you are not stitching in two sleeves for the same side. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so we went ahead and stitched in the side of our sleeves. So you have 2 notches for the back and 1 notch for the front, and you should have that same thing on your bodice. And if you remember when I told you, go ahead and make sure that you have all of those notches and all that good stuff. This is what we use them for. So you want to make sure that you match that front notch to that front notch. And the back notch to the back notch, which would be 2 for the back, okay? I usually like to start in the underarm seam, okay? And then I kind of go inside, and then I essentially go ahead and pin in my my sleeves in. You are going to have to ease these in because your sleeve will have some your sleeves will have some ease. So usually what I tend to do is I tend to cut into the seam allowance just a little, not a lot. So I would just go, boy, these scissors need to be sharpened. All right, so I usually just do small cuts, right? And I'm able to ease in my sleeves that way. Right? There we go. You usually have another notch. You usually have, not another notch, you have on your sleeve pattern, you have, let me show you. You also have dots, and this dot right here, that is your shoulder seam. So you definitely want to match those up too. Again, easing in my sleeves. Need to do a few more cuts on this side. And you see where I'm making those cuts? My seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeters. So I want to make sure that whatever cuts I do to ease this in, that I keep it within that seam allowance and no more. Okay? Or you're just going to have a hole in your sleeves, and that's just not going to be good. right? So go ahead and set in both of your sleeves. Once you do that, I want to make sure that you go ahead and you stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance or 1.5 centimeters. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and all the way to the end. Go ahead and set both of your sleeves. So I went ahead and set in my sleeves. And when you're setting your sleeves, just make sure that you don't have any puckers. If you have some puckers, right, which could happen, just go ahead and unpick about 1/2 inch on each side and go ahead and try to ease it in again, right? Now I'm gonna put this off to the side and I'm gonna grab piece number 8, and these are my cuffs. And I am making my cuffs a little bit not as wide. So go ahead and stitch. You have a notch on each side. So let me show you the pattern piece. So this is your sleeve band, and you have a notch right there, a notch right there. So you want to fold it that way and stitch, all right? So go ahead and do that for both of your cuffs. Go ahead and do that now. So we went ahead and stitched in our cuffs, right? And usually what I like to do is just kind of cut a little bit of that seam allowance. So when I fold it, I don't have bulk, right? So go ahead and just fold these, right? You're gonna be ending up with like the right side of the fabric. So I usually just like to pin it right there. And you also have 2 notches on the side right there. And that just means the middle. So I like to put a pin there. And then another pin there. And another pin there. It just gives me kind of like four corners, right? And if you want to be exact, you can put another pin right there. All right, so now I'm gonna grab my sleeve. You want to do this right sides together, okay? You have your seam and you have your seam on your sleeve. Oh, actually it goes this way. So my seam and my seam, okay? And I want to match those up. Definitely want to match those right up. Okay, then I should have, hold on, another notch at the end of my sleeve. Probably didn't see it, but I'm gonna put it right there. And that's the middle of my sleeve. And I want to match it to that notch for the middle of my cuff. All right. There, you want to match that. And now if you notice your sleeve, right, has a lot more length than your sleeve cuff, right? So you're going to have to stretch this, and you're going to have to stretch your cuff, not your sleeve, okay? So you are, again, you're stretching your cuff. I'm stretching my cuff, not my sleeve, okay? Not my sleeve. I'm stretching my cuff, putting a pin there. I'm probably gonna stretch it some more and put another pin there. So when I go at the sewing machine, I'm keeping the same distance, okay? So again, I'm stretching my cuff. I'm not stretching my sleeve. Very important, okay? Again, stretch and pin. So when you are in the sewing machine, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to stretch your cuff for that to meet the length of your sleeve. And it's gonna look like this, okay? There's my seams meeting, and you see a little bit of gathers on my sleeve. It's not puckers, but you have a couple of gathers, and it just gives a nice, it just gives your top a nice look. So go ahead and attach both of your sleeves to your both of your cuff to your sleeves. Again, make sure that when you are in the sewing machine that you are slightly stretching it. Okay, you want to stretch your cuff, you do not want to stretch your sleeve. Go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and attach both of your cuffs. I attached both of my cuffs. I also finish the inside. So now I'm going to put my top off to the side, but not too far. And I'm going to grab piece number 8. And this is the lower band. If you are not doing a lower band, just go ahead and turn it up 5/8 of an inch in the top stitch, and that is your hem, right? I actually think that this is easier. It just depends what do you like to do. Same thing, I want you to grab both of your pieces number 8, which is your lower band, and I want you to stitch on both sides 5/8 of an inch. And just like we did with our cuffs, I like to remove just this kind of like where I folded, just so it's easier. I don't have bulk, right? And this fabric is not too bad, but perhaps you can do this in a sweater knit and it may be a little bit tougher to do. Same exact thing we're going to, I like to usually just kind of fold those, right? So they're not all in one side. And you are going to pin on the sides. Okay. And I'll fold it onto itself. Same thing on the other side. That. Put it in. Okay. So you should have what I'm going to call a gigantic sleeve band, right? And same thing as we did with our cuff, we are going to do with the sleeve band. The trick, if you see it, right, it's not as wide as the bottom of my hem on my top. Okay, if you can see that, that's where it kind of ends. So same thing as we did, and what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and pin both of these on the sides. Start there, okay? Make sure that, right, there's not twisted in any way, shape, or form. And then you pin on the sides. And just like we did with the cuffs, we're going to have to slightly stretch this, okay? Same exact way. I'm going to try to move this one band down. But go ahead and pin, right? And you will have to just ease it in. Same exact way. Okay, if it's easier to figure out where is the center front and center back, center front and center back for your sleeve or your lower band, you can also do that. And mine is not too bad because I took some width off of mine. Okay, so pin one side and then go ahead and do the other side. And I strongly suggest you try starting at the middle. And again, notice if I'm stretching the sleeve band, I'm not stretching my top, okay? Once you pin it all in, you're going to go to your sewing machine and same thing. Again, you're going to stretch your sleeve band. You want to be stretching this, okay? This, your sleeve band, not your top. So go ahead and do that now. And make sure that you don't forget to backstitch at the start and all the way to the end. And your seam allowance is 5/8 or 1.5 centimeter. All right, guys, so I went ahead and attached my lower band, and all I have to do now is go ahead and finish my my seams inside. I'll probably trim and serge, but you are all done. I hope you like this so long. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. I am also going to try to put a blog post with additional pictures and also what changes I made. I made to this pattern, of course. I kind of made my cuffs not as wide. I raised my neckline and I took it in on the sides about 1/2 inch on each side. All right, guys, I will see you next time. Bye.